So today's a lightning round. We're cramming what's probably several hours worth of content into 30 minutes. So we've allotted each of us about 5 minutes to cover the high points of Ignite, right? So last week's recap, we attended so you didn't have to. We're excited to kind of kick around some of the things that we've learned and some of the things that we found are important. We know we're not going to cover it all. So in this slide, and Julie will throw it in the chat, I think if we talked about that before, there's a poll saying, look, if there's something you want us to drill down more deeply on in a future Ask Simpraxis session from Ignite, this is specific to Ignite content and topics. Please use this poll to kind of vote up what you're looking to know more about, because this is 5 minutes, broad brush, kind of let's go. All right, so gonna start with Julie. Julie, you're our leadoff hitter, and you've got some top takeaways for us.
I do. Well, I have a top takeaway. So my takeaway, the big news was graph connectors going GA. And by that, I mean that there's a bunch of graph connectors that were built by partners in the community. BA Insights is a long-running search connector type people that we know. And Box and Luma Apps and Go1 and Cognizant and all these companies have built over 100 connectors, and those connectors are now GA. And what a graph connector is it's an ability to bring external content from something outside your organization into your Microsoft 365 search experience. And so I think of this, if you're old hat at SharePoint, I think, or Microsoft, you could think of this as the new BCS, really. So it allows you to define or use an existing connector, define the things that you want brought into search, and it uses adaptive cards for the display paradigm. And that content can show up in the search results directly as my sort of screenshot on the right upper part show, or it's a vertical. It's also a vertical in the search. So that's really interesting. Further, you can, it's still in preview, but you can create your own custom connectors for your own data sources. I did some reading on that preview. And there's a link there to the AKA MS PR 205. That is an Ignite talk that goes through the connectors in more detail and shows a demo of creating your own connector, which is really cool to be able to watch. And when I did some reviewing of the content, there are a lot of known limitations. So if you're thinking about trying this out or and giving it a go, you definitely want to go. I made a little short link, simpinfo /GC-limits. That and the screenshot there shows some of the known limitations. They're extensive, so you're going to want to review that before you build one of these. But really interesting, cool extensibility for Microsoft 365 search, especially since these search results will show up everywhere the Microsoft 365 search bar is. So, in even Bing search, the Microsoft Windows 10 search, all of those places, this search content will show up in. So that's a pretty cool extra feature, I think. That is what I have.
With time to spare, Julie, thank you. I know we've got a lot to cover. I'll move right on to Derek.
I'm giving my time to Emily.
See
wow.
I don't get the time
next.
Todd doesn't get my time.
We'll also monitor the chat for follow-up questions and other takeaways. Let's run right into Derek.
Okay, so this one is is pretty near and dear to my heart. I've been griping about this for at least the last 2 years. And with Ignite this year, they announced that they're giving us 2 new header options. The first is actually that one at the top. It's the extended header option. As part of that, some of the functionality we're getting is to add a background image or a pattern or something like that. We've always had the logo, but now we can put something behind it, which is really great, especially for, like your home site or a hub site, something that's like really special that needs an extra emphasis. just to give it that like messaging and branding and making sure that it's on point. I wouldn't use this on every site and make this the default, because really it's all about the content, and this does actually push that content down. But I thought that was really cool. The other thing we're getting in this layout is the text for the header can be left aligned, right aligned, or centered. So depending on where where the action is in your image or your pattern, you get to move that around and sort of, get a little more customization on that. So the extended header and actually the header options are all going to roll out by the end of this year. So hopefully we'll get a little holiday present. The other new one, and this is really more my favorite than the extended, is the minimal. It's way at the bottom and it's very tiny, and I think that's sort of by design. It shrinks it all down, much slimmer profile, gives you a tiny little icon for your logo. We're also getting the ability to turn your site title on and turn it off. So you don't have to worry about getting, having that sort of like double list or, home or multiple site titles there. And it's super, super tight. So as Julie's saying in the chat, like we get more real estate for the content, which is the real reason why you're going there. And as I said, this is all slated to be released by the end of the year. Let's see what else I put there. Yeah, all right, that was the good one. The next slide is in keeping with the header and the layouts is also my personal favorite, which is the footers. I've built a whole bunch of custom header and footer controls over the last, several years. We've always had the simple footer, right? Where we had well, not always, but in recent history, we've gotten the simple footer, which is just the links at the bottom of the page on the right hand. And these are actually all in GA right now. So you can go to your tenant today and you should be able to see the new extended header footer, which allows you, just like in the main nav, to provide headers. So as you can see here in the slot in the middle, it says leadership, CEO, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can now have that sort of sort of stacked multi-link navigation. If you want to do something that is sort of expand and collapse, you do need to use an SPFX or a custom developed solution. There are plenty of examples of that on the PNP stuff, but that is available now, which is great. Mike, one more for me.
Yeah, Derek, one point of clarification on these footers.
Sure.
Are they site specific or are they global?
They are site specific. They are not global, and that's sort of been my gripe about the footers all along, right. Which is why I end up building a custom one, because you can put a custom one and make it global
into an extension.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. And you're a theme designer.
Yes. Okay. So I just wanted to put this one in there because I still talk with people who don't know about this. Nothing really changed in the theme design, in themes designs. However, one of the things to keep in mind with this is, as you're thinking about themes for your site, you can put your custom palettes in, and you can use custom colors. Right down at the bottom, and this is what I wanted to emphasize, is the accessibility checker. Because we've had quite a few clients where we've gone to go generate a new theme for them, and none of their colors really sort of match when it comes to creating an accessible theme. So the contrast ratio may be like a gray on a gray, or a black on a gray, or even a red on a white. Those don't meet accessibility requirements for people with disabilities. So it's really important, if you're going to be using the theme designer, to go in and check that little bottom part at the bottom of the screen that says accessibility checker, and make sure that your site is accessible to the maximum number of people. Those are my hot takeaways.
Thanks, Derek, for the hot takes. We're right on time, so now we're going to blow up our schedule, because Todd's got like a million great takeaways that he wants to share with us.
Yeah, so there was a bunch of great things. I had to winnow it down a little bit, and I'm talking. Mark Chrisman is one of the folks that's always on this call, and for whatever reason he can't get in the chat room, so I'm kind of talking about this and talking about how we missed some things, and so there's a million admin things that I haven't even looked at yet. So figuring out which of the ones that I was going to talk about was really, really tough. One of the things that I really liked was they announced what the next version of Stream is going to look like. And I really liked how they took a playbook out of how Teams changed. The big change they're making with Stream now is all the videos are going to go in SharePoint. So instead of Streams being this mysterious vault somewhere where all your videos are at and kind of a service off to the side, now Stream is going to be a service that exposes videos that are stored in SharePoint. And so we get all the great things that Stream did, but now we can control the storage a lot better. And what that lets us do is, for instance, when we're recording this Teams meeting right now, when you record a meeting, it will go into a SharePoint site, or if I start a recording, it will go into my OneDrive, but it's right there as a file that I can deal with. And so that allows us to split up storage and monitor it that way. The other great thing that it does is it lets us share Stream videos externally, because now it's just sharing an external file in SharePoint. And that's something we've wanted to do a lot of times, and I have a lot of customers that want to do that. And so moving that into SharePoint and OneDrive allows us to take advantage of all of that, but it also lets us take advantage of all the other SharePoint things, classifications and all of that. So it's great that that's out there. And there's a link in there. If whoever wants to, if somebody else, I got links in there on all these. If somebody wants to paste them in, I don't know if we're giving out these slides or not. Groups is another thing near and dear to my heart. There were a bunch of new things about groups out there. One of them or a couple of them I wanted to talk about were, we can now, with Microsoft 365 groups and security groups, we can assign Office 365 roles. So the example that I give here is I can create a Microsoft 365, which means it has a team and a SharePoint library and all of that. And I can obviously put people in it, but I can add an Azure AD role to it. So I can add the role of SharePoint admins. So now as people come in and out of my company, I can add them to a group, which gives them access to all of our internal documentation about how we do things, all the chats that the SharePoint admins of the company have had, but then also automatically gives them the ability to manage SharePoint inside of our tenant just by dropping people into one location. And so that's all of the Azure AD roles are in there. So that's a really great one. Another thing, and I can't remember when this came out, but Microsoft added a groups management role in Azure AD. So now you don't have to be a SharePoint admin or an Azure AD admin. You can just manage groups if you're a big enough company that needs that. They've expanded some of the dynamic group things. So you've been able to have dynamic membership in groups. I think I've got a blog post on that, but they have expanded how well that handles large companies, some of that kind of stuff. So that scales a lot better. There's just all kinds of really great, the groups thing, that's really where Microsoft's putting a lot of energy, because that's the membership provider they see moving forward. The SharePoint Admin Center got a whole lot of great things, and I don't know what the timeframes are, because Ignite, they show things that are out, they show things they're going to do, the timeframe gets weird. But the SharePoint Admin Center is undergoing a bunch of changes. My favorite is the active sites page now. If you go to that, you've got a lot more columns that you can add into your view, and then you can start doing sorting and exporting. So you can say now who created the SharePoint site, how did they create this SharePoint site, and you can sort by that. You can see when the last access was, those kind of things. There's a bunch of that coming out, and I'm really excited about that. Like Julie, I'm a big fan of the Graph and the Microsoft Graph SDK PowerShell, which is just the Graph PowerShell. I don't know why they've got SDK in there, but it's just the Graph PowerShell. That has hit general availability, so it's at version 1.01 now. I'm really excited about that because everything's going into the Graph, and so that's good. It's a little rough for those of you that have played with PowerShell before. It takes some getting used to. It adds like 80 modules. It's kind of cumbersome, but it does start getting us access to all that great information that's in Graph and doing the things that are in Graph. One of my favorite videos and a good kind of primer if you've only got time to watch, one thing from Ignite. There's a video sidetracked. Scott Scholl does it and just talks about a bunch of the things that are not in tracks at Ignite and has links to some of this. And he has a couple of dozen things in there. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is that they announced at Ignite that the next version of all the on-prem products, Exchange, SharePoint, whatever, there will be new versions. They will be coming out in 2021. They will be coming out in the last half of 2021. So everybody who was worried that SharePoint on-prem was going to die, that has been, not the case now for another couple of years. But they made the announcement that it was going to be subscription only. So Microsoft really loves that recurring revenue bit, and they will, you won't have to get everything in Office 365, but you will have to pay for am I getting played off? Is that what's it's like the Oscars? Is that apparently I've gone over time. So it's just planning to upgrade on-prem servers and subscription only starting next year. Back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it. Thanks for just keeping us on schedule here. That song was specifically selected for you. Let's take it to Mark.
Mark's on mute. Mark is still on
5 minutes.
Darn it. Mouse was burning down, so I had to put myself on mute. So my topic is SharePoint Syntax. It's the first product coming out of the whole Project Cortex effort. It's not Project Cortex itself, it's one of the things coming out of Project Cortex. Project Cortex still exists and is still cranking through with some other products that will probably come out. One of the first things we've seen out of the Project Cortex / SharePoint Syntax work is a modernized term store admin center, as well as the content type hub. Those are primarily lipstick on a pig. The underlying functionality hasn't changed that much, but it's allowed them to by going to that modern UI, it allows them to support some of the stuff that's going on in SharePoint Syntax. And I am going to push the send button on some links that I didn't include in my slide, but nope. So what SharePoint Syntax does is, again, it's just a piece of Project Cortex. It allows you to do some stuff that historically some third parties have dabbled in. Knowledge Lake is the one that always comes to mind when I see this stuff. You'll notice in that first image, you might have purchase orders that are coming in, or contracts, or some sort of paper-based input that you're getting from your customers, your clients, or whoever. You can train SharePoint Syntax to understand what those documents are and where the metadata is that you want to pull out of it. So you use machine teaching as opposed to machine learning, and you sort of train it to understand where the important parts of metadata are in each one of those objects. And then the AI engine will pull that metadata out and augment the content as you're uploading it into your library. So you sort of turn SharePoint Syntax on a particular library, or all of your libraries if you have a lot of this going on, and it augments all of that document upload process. It's nice because you can build in your own content compliance needs into sort of that pipeline as well. It's a great sort of beginning to end process helper for people who are in that kind of sort of a high volume document processing situation. I don't think it serves purposes for, again, this is a single product coming out of Project Cortex, so this may interest some people a lot and other people not at all. But I think a lot of the work that's gone on underneath in the Project Cortex guys is under the covers of this, building in those AI hooks and building in the capabilities to start looking at content and making intelligent decisions about it without people doing anything. So we've seen some interesting things at Ignite about content cards and things like that, which will be coming and will be driven by a lot of the same underlying engine. So it's exciting stuff. It's great to see something coming out of Project Cortex that we actually can start to use. It's an add-on to your existing E or B licenses, business licenses, and it's I think it's $5 a month US per user, and you probably would license the people who actually need to use it. And that is what I've got.
All right, thanks, Mark. I know that we've been populating links and participating in chat kind of in parallel to this. We'll keep it going, but we're going to flip it to Emily because I know, Emily, you've got a lot of takeaways, and then I'll wrap us up.
All right, so Mike, if you don't mind just hitting again, we'll have this little video on the right playing in a loop, which will be demoing the SharePoint App Bar for us. So coming by end of year, we will have this, and one of my favorite parts is global navigation. Finally, we have a response to that from Mike. A lot of our clients I know have been just using the hub navigation and having maybe one hub or manually updating or making that custom navigation. So that'll be great. The other pieces of the SharePoint App Bar are also highlighting a lot of the goodies that are on the SharePoint Start page, which many organizations do not focus on, and this really brings it front and center. So things like recent sites and followed sites, the news roll-up, and those recent files. I don't have time to talk about news today, but I am going to be having a 15-minute how-to session at GlobalCon 4 on October 20th. So please join me there, and I'll talk about news boosts, promoting news, time to read, and Mike will talk a little bit more about the page analytics next.
You get 15 whole minutes, Emily? Jeez, what a
15 whole minutes just for news.
All right.
It's their Turbo Tuesday. So if you feel like Ignite and a whole week of videos and these longer videos are overwhelming, that might be a great opportunity for you to catch up on these digestible chunks at GlobalCon. I also failed to mention for that global nav, you can scope that to your home site. You can choose the hub nav or the site nav. You can choose a custom logo, and if you do not, then it'll just be the little home icon up there in the top left. We associated hubs coming by end of year, so our global navigation and navigation options are expanding, which is exciting. Next slide, please, Mike. Another great one, and then if you don't mind hitting for play on that video too, Mike, thank you, is the SharePoint Home Site app in Teams. I'm super, super excited about this. I know a lot of companies are kind of having this discussion of, is SharePoint still around? Can I just have my whole intranet in Teams? And as people are adopting to use Teams primarily, it can be a little bit challenging to then also get them to go to this browser. But if you're adding SharePoint in a tab in Teams, you're losing things like the header and the footer, navigation, those actions in the top right. So what this SharePoint Home Site app will add that navigation for you. It also is going to scope that search right above it in Teams to all of your intranet, which is amazing. That global navigation is the same as the SharePoint App Bar navigation, so it will be supporting audience targeting. Right now we have audience targeting in Nav and on Pages. Another announcement is that we have that coming soon for quick links and events too. Speaking of events, they announced that we're going to get that beloved calendar view, which people have been wanting for a very long time now, so that's end of year. The other thing that this announcement made me notice that has been here the whole time, and I'm embarrassed I didn't notice, is up at the top left in Teams, there is a back and forwards button that will work for your navigation in the SharePoint Home Site app. But if you're commonly switching between Teams and chats, that actually brings you back and forth where you last were within Teams. Did anyone else not know that one? I didn't know that one.
I didn't know.
Yeah, so exciting, right? So sometimes that's the other good thing about Ignite, right? They're reminding you about old announcements and maybe bringing some other features to light that you haven't even considered. All right, last slide, Mike. And hopefully I don't get the music on this one. Okay, so I can't mention Teams without also mentioning Yammer. One of the biggest trends I have seen in the past year, and with the increase in usage in Teams, is people trying to get rid of Yammer entirely. There are still very different valid use cases for each, and I will paste in a link to an article that talks about the different scopes of what might help make you those decisions. Things like company culture, size, audience, persistence of message, and intent of communications. So quick hit on Yammer. If you can please hit again, Mike. Excellent, thank you. And then one more time to have that play. So one of the great things is Yammers is now going to have a Teams app as well. Your notifications are also going to appear in Teams, but that is going to be specific to @mentions and announcements. One of the big reasons why I think that is so crucially important is if you use an org-wide team and treat it as Yammer, every time someone posts about their dog, you're going to get a little activity notification, and it makes those mean less. If you continue to use Yammer, you're only going to get those notifications in Teams for things that require your action. So you can consume Yammer when you want, and you don't have to leave Teams to be able to do it. There is no Teams SharePoint web part, but there is a wonderful, rich Yammer web part. So again, embedding these communities into these communication sites is still best done with Yammer. Teams posts have one treatment. Yammer can be praise, poll, announcement, question, and pretty soon you're going to be able to feature the conversation to keep posts at the top with a different header and background for more visual attention. So there's a lot that Yammer can do that Teams can't. So please do read the article, explore those features before you make a decision to use one or the other. There's also a lot of exciting community insights that are coming to Yammer, which Mike will cover as well. So over to you, Mike.
Awesome transition, Emily. Thank you. So for the last over the last year or so, I've been focused as kind of in a product manager role for an intranet for a large organization. And the thing that communication professionals are constantly asking us is, what's having impact that I've published? What content is resonating with people? What's getting liked? What's getting shared? What's getting read? What's getting used, et cetera. So a couple of key announcements I saw in Ignite that I was excited about were new Yammer post-specific and community-specific analytics. The left-hand screenshot at the bottom of the screen shows that. So just a little bit more capability baked right into Yammer, where community managers can quickly see what's hot content, what's getting reactions, who's seeing it, who's reacting, who's commenting, et cetera. And if you've been a SharePoint site owner, you've seen SharePoint site or page analytics in the past. These are just more, there's a couple of enhancements, and B, there are other ways of them being delivered, right? So in line, I can see the analytics on the right side of the page. How many viewers, how many views. The average time spent per user is new, and the page traffic by time is new. I think we had that at a site level before, but knowing when to publish, which of your news pages get the most activity if you publish them at 7 a.m. versus 7 p.m., probably interesting to people working on enterprise class communications, right? Comms professionals. So there's a couple of things that I'm hoping to see here that I haven't seen yet in the Ignite announcements. But although average time spent per user is great until someone falls asleep while they're looking at your page, right? And then you're going to have it skewed. But the other thing that happens in the authoring of news that I'm sure Emily will talk about in her upcoming thing is Microsoft or SharePoint will automatically calculate a time to read, like number of minutes to read. So if any of you use Medium, you'll see that in a blog post, right? If it's 6 paragraphs, it might say 8 minutes. This take 8 minutes to read. That's happening natively. These analytics will also be delivered for you in a digest on a weekly basis. So similar to the News Digest functionality, you're going to get an analytics digest pushed to you. I think a few opportunities are missed here, things I haven't seen yet that I'm excited to see and I've been asked for. Likes and shares, not yet incorporated into these, and click paths and referrers, not here. So we have a ways to go. I still think tie graph for analytics about sites is still the gold standard, but we continue to see more and more getting added to the out-of-the-box capabilities. So I want to leave you with some next steps, or we will leave you with some next steps. An awful lot of resources and takeaways. We know we just skimmed the surface today, a half hour to cover 2 days of concurrent, blast digital content, et cetera. If you want that deeper dive, the poll link that we gave you earlier is at the bottom here, the want a deeper dive. A ton of resources and takeaways. Anything specific that we want to make sure we draw people's attention to?
I have pasted. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I was going to say, I think Sue's roadmap slides.
Yeah.
Really important to call because it's all of the slides that they have at the end of each presentation at Ignite that says, what's available now, what's upcoming, and then what's by end of year, what's first quarter, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that's in the chat. All of these on this slide are in the chat currently.
Yeah.
Perfect. Any other questions from the chat that we should surface as a group?
Nope, no questions that I saw.
Yeah,
Lots of yippies and
Oh, I forgot. So one thing I did forget to mention, and I don't know if anybody in the chat deals with it. There's been a bunch of multi-tenant things added to Office 365 in the last year. Tenant-to-tenant migrations is something that's out there in various forms, Exchange, SharePoint. So that's something that it's some practice we've been seeing all the time. And the SharePoint admin page will start recognizing if you have access to multiple tenants and give you like an all tenants view and that kind of stuff. That's coming as well.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Todd. So in addition to the deeper dive on any of these areas, and there's areas we didn't even touch on. Julie touched on search a little bit with the graph connectors, but we know there's an awful lot of other announcements out there. Happy to dive deeper and talk through them. In 2 weeks, we've got Derek queued up to lead us through some branding and UI customization conversations. If you've got questions about that topic specifically, please drop them in via the link at the bottom, or as always, contact any of us individually. We're happy to kind of nominate topics as well. Anybody have anything else?
No.
Any closing notes? Finished at 1:01 p.m. So I'm super proud that people
Well done, everybody.
crammed everything in. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for
All
coming.
right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Great
you,
job,
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.